yesterday I turned on the TV a couple different times when I wasn't out running around, and of course the most featured program was the story that one of the programs is putting together, I forgot what channel it was, on the life of Jesus. And so, you know, it's the Easter season. And so a friend of mine said, so you're a follower of Jesus and you believe in Jesus, right? Because you're a minister. And I said, well, not exactly. And so explaining to somebody about Jesus from a new thought perspective is sometimes a challenge. And especially when their view of God might be different than your view. And so what it does is it takes us into a new realization of who we are. So as I was explaining, that many Christians believe that Jesus was not only an extraordinary man, but was the only Son of God. And what I tried to explain is, Jesus was the great example, the way shower, and that when we believed with the same faith and conviction that Jesus believed in, we too could do acts greater than even those. Those are the words he spoke to us. And so I think that we have to remember, and so what I also shared is, you know, Jesus so firmly believed that God was within him, that he acted on that power and that belief, and he raised people up from the dead. He made blind men see. And we too have that faith because he was the great example, the great way shower. And so God exists within us. And so if my message is anything today, it's about this is springtime, this is a new beginning, and whether you're a pagan or whether you have any other spiritual beliefs, this is that first day of the rest of your life. This is the first time you can let your light shine. One of the things I was remembering is the rolling away of the stone. And what it reminded me of, sometimes what happens is, in the cave of our own being, we have all the reasons why we don't shine. And so resurrection to me is a chance for us to renew our faith and our belief that we are this spiritual being, the oneness with God that is having a human experience. So I think that this is a time for us to really celebrate our authentic nature. Our authentic nature is we are one with the divine. The talks in the daily guides this month are written by Michael Gott. Now, any of you who have been to Silmar or to any of those New Thought things know that Michael Gott used to be the music director at Dallas for like 15 years or something, and has sang at many, many different venues around the country. And along the way, he became a practitioner and then a minister. And he has served at a couple of churches. Currently, he is the senior associate minister in a Unity in in Houston. And yet, he writes from the heart. He writes from a New Thought perspective. And I wanted to share what he had to say about what I consider. This is in tomorrow's reading. But it's called Revealing the Divine Within. Because that's kind of what rolling away the stone represents to me. It's revealing the light within us. And Meister Eckhart, he quotes as saying, God is not found in the soul by adding anything, but by a process of subtraction. By a process of subtraction. And so one of the things that I'm talking about today, I'm kicking off the month series about Excuses BeGone by Dr. Wayne Dyer. For many of you know him, he's kind of like my personal guru, even though I've never met the man. I take him in. We communicate on the spiritual plane. He knows me, I know him. He's one of my Facebook friends. Actually he is. So anyway, I'm going to touch on that because what happens, what keeps us from realizing that the divine is with us, we make a lot of excuses. For many of you, you know that this year's theme is to live a life by intention. And to help us live a life by intention, part of the tools are, let's figure out how we can do that. What keeps us on track? What does that? So like last year, I did this thing on a complaint-free world, which was to help us stop making complaints so that we really see that we don't have to be a victim. We're not held by anybody else. We're responsible for our own self. And then I did a return to basics, which talked about science of mind, basic principles. And then I did the 4 agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz, which is when you live by the 4 agreements, you can show up as this authentic person. So now this month, we're going to have 4 talks about excuses. What are the common excuses that you make in your daily life that keep you from living a thriving life? Because why are you here? Not here, but why are you here in the greater picture? I mean, are you here for joy?
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't you like some more joy? Wouldn't you like to live in joy all the time? If you're living in joy, you are a beautiful example of the divine presence of God. You're here for joy. You can be that spiritual expression in joy. When I liked that Science of Mind, he said, Ernest Holmes, our founder, said, I would find a resting place in thee, and in thy presence live. And if we remember that when we live in the presence of the divine, we're living in grace. Living in grace is like living in the divine presence. And when we know that there is no excuse for not living a thriving life, because when you live in the presence of God, there are no withholds, there are no limitations. There is only the divine. When I picked up this book again, I'll pick that up later, I was reminded that I bought this book probably when it first came out, with 2009. And at the time, he wrote it, Wayne Dyer wrote it because he had just finished writing a book about changing your thinking through the Tao Te Ching. He had done this. And he read this, the 81 days. And I don't know if any of you have done that. I've done that study twice now, where I've actually spent each day contemplating a new thought and a new way of being. And what it does, it has a transformative effect on you. Well, he did that, and sitting in this transformation and he wrote this book, and that was a few years earlier, he asked, how can I live a more authentic life? What is it that allows me to walk in the grace of God? And the answer that came back to is, stop making excuses for why not, why you aren't doing it. And so what I liked about this is he talked about how that was so profound, and the fact that he could do many, many different things. And he realized that many of us have excuses for why we do things. And he brought up the 2 primary excuses most of us use for why we are the way we are and why we aren't going to change. And the first one is, we say, it's in our DNA. It's the way I am. You can't change me. It's just me. That's the first excuse, believe it or not. And the second excuse we use is, it's our family dynamics. It's our family culture. We use both of those excuses of why we cannot change. And what he says is, that's just not true. That is only an excuse and a hiding out. Now, he goes into a lot of it, and I don't have time to do it all, because you'd be here way past dinner time. But I want to make the shorthand version, the Cliff version. If you just look at the reasons why that is not true, and he gave a couple examples that I like, because Ernest Holmes used to say religious science was a science. And some people always ask, how is that so? Well, let me explain a couple things. You all know what a placebo is, right? Or did I just placebo? How about that? When I first came to California, I used to call Yosemite Yosemite. But I always said La Jolla. I did not say La Jolla. Anyway, a placebo. A placebo is something like a sugar pill that somebody gives. And people have used this before, and that's known in some studies. If you give somebody a placebo, it has the same effect because they believe the power of the pill. They know that. But most people would say that's not true in surgery. So there's an example in there from Baylor that used it by a person, and he made this study because he did a lot of knee surgery. For some of us who have had knees, now I had a little bit of knee problem about 5 years ago, and I went to my doctor and he said, if you'd lose 40 pounds, you wouldn't have a knee problem. I said, it's my DNA. But I lost the 40 pounds and I haven't had a knee problem since. But anyway, he did this knee surgery. And he took a group and he decided to test out this placebo effect. So he broke his patients into 3 groups. In the first group, I have to read this to make sure I get it right. He shaved the damaged cartilage of the knee of one group. For another group, he flushed out the knee joint, removing the material thought to be causing the inflammatory effect. And both of these constituted the typical treatment. The third, he opened up the knee. He made actions like he was doing something. He did absolutely nothing, and he replaced it. Now, what do you think the results were? You can kind of guess, right? The results was, yes, the groups who received the surgery as expected improved, but the placebo group improved just as much as the other 2 groups. And so what we know is our words and our thoughts and our beliefs create a reality, and they change things. They change things in our life. And if we truly believe, sometimes we're like from Missouri and we have to be shown. I asked God this year to stop showing me the 2x4 because I was getting a flat forehead. I don't need to learn that way. So if we really do that, then we know that who we are and what we attract is what we believe. So if you want to do something, change your belief, right? Ernest Holmes would have said, our founder, change your thinking, change your life. Now we have 2 minds, he talks about that. And I like this one because we have the conscious mind, which is the creative mind of God. Guess what? The studies show that's only like 5% of the mind you use to operate in your world. The other 95% is habitual. You operate out of habit. Think of it. Driving over here, did you forget for a moment exactly where you were when your mind went somewhere else, and then all of a sudden you were in front of the parking lot and you said, oh, I better find a place? I tell you, I'm driving up 15, and a lot of times I'm thinking about what I'm going to say, I'm thinking about what's going to happen, and all of a sudden, oops, here's a turnoff. We go elsewhere. We drive by habit. We do many things in our habit. We probably, I'm going to assume most men are this way, maybe most women are too. I do the first 3 or 4 things the same way every morning when I get up. I'm a creature of habit. And when I do them out of order, I feel a little off balance. That's my excuse. See how easy it is? I think I'm a little off balance, but that's not the real reason, right? So we can change that. And part of how we change it is affirmations, which I really like how we do that because we got the affirmations. Darlene brought affirmations today. And she cut them up. They're the ones that are falling around. They're in your program. And they're little sayings. Now, to keep this down into 20 minutes, I'm not going to do the whole first 60 pages of the book. I was prepared, though, you can see. I'm going to skip until right down to the back and say, why What are the excuses from really doing it? Because these are the tools that can really help you. These are the things where you can start changing your life. Because these are the things that we give to ourselves and we give to others to keep us from doing things. And so I'm going to give you a little of the excuse that we use, and then I'll give you the affirmation. It will be difficult. The affirmation is, I have the ability to accomplish any task I set my mind to with ease and comfort. It's going to be risky. Some of us say that. And some of us think it without saying it, and we don't do it because we're afraid of the risk. Well, if we say, being myself involves no risk. Being myself involves no risk. It is my ultimate truth, and I live it fearlessly. I like this one because some people don't start it because they think it will take a long time. And some people say, well, take the first step, right? You got to move it. He says, I have infinite patience when it comes to fulfilling my destiny. I have infinite patience when it comes to fulfilling my destiny. And this one, for those of us who are attached to our families and what our families think of us, I've danced out of the box so long that no longer matters. There will be family drama. And the affirmation is, I would rather be loathed for who I am than loved for who I am not. How many of us can say that? Think how powerful that is. I would rather be loathed for who I am than for who I am not. Because many of us show up the way we think other people expect us rather than showing up as our authentic self. And so you're really making two people unhappy because you probably aren't showing up the way they really want you to anyway. They just haven't told you. Another one is, I don't deserve it. In the affirmation, I am a divine creation, a piece of God, therefore I cannot be undeserving. He talks about this, the undeserving piece is interesting, because while he did not grow up in the Depression, he was born in 1940, he was impacted by his parents who went through the Depression. And for those who know about that or impact, the Depression was not what we had a few years ago. The Depression really was severe back in the 30s, where people actually were starving to death. Well, the people that came out of that era became very prone not to take risk, to be very careful, and they garnered everything. And it got into to do things whether we deserved them. And so he says, I am this divine creation, a piece of God, therefore I cannot be undeserving. And when you know that, embody it. Let me just read a couple more. There are 18 of them. So I can't afford it. And I like this one, especially people who live on fixed income, because it's only fixed income in their own mind. If you believe that there is abundance in this world and you deserve it and you ought to have it, if you can believe that, there is unexpected income coming your way. You are not living on fixed income other than in your own mind, and when you believe that, you limit it. Do you get it? It is up to you. You are your own bank account. Your spiritual bank account as well as your financial bank account. And what he says is, the affirmation is, I am connected to an unlimited source of abundance. And here is one, I have to say, I'm too old. I've heard that from people. I'm too old to start that. Well, I'm too young. You say, I am an infinite being. The age of my body has no bearing on what or who I am. Because we have no idea where we're going to die. We're going to move on to the next expression of who we are. For me, it could be today. It could be 10 years from now. It could be, I'm actually thinking about being 100, or even being the 100th oldest living person. I think that's now 117. Velva might beat me to it, but and then I'm too busy. How many have said, I'm too busy? I'm too busy to go have coffee with you. I'm too busy to have fun with you. I'm too busy. Say, as I unclutter my life, I free myself to answer the callings of my soul. Do you see that when you're the expression of the divine, you are the only way that God can be expressed through your unique self? So don't be too busy for God. You have a calling. Your soul has a calling, a response to answer, to be heard, to be yourself. So today, if I find the right page, be bigger than you think you are. Marianne Williams had said, it's not our darkness that frightens us, it is our light. So on this day of resurrection and Easter, and the Easter celebration of the spring equinox, be your light. Do not be afraid of it. Don't hide it underneath a bushel. Let it shine. Be magnificent. Joy is the infallible sign of the presence of God. Thank you.